Hi guys, and welcome back to Pass and Move. And for today's episode in the Premier League series, we have a Crystal Palace tactics and team guide. Now Crystal Palace are a very interesting team to take over in FM18 in truth. And the reason being, besides obviously, club history and the aims of trying to take a team who haven't performed necessarily too well in the Premier League, and turning them into title contenders and that sort of business, is the challenge itself of managing Crystal Palace. So to give you to clear that up for you, the board expected to be a mid-table club, but you will see through the when we take a look at the squad and all that sort of business that this team are not ready for a mid-table position, and I think they might not even be ready for Premier League action in truth. We'll go through it all one by one, but just to give you an idea on what this episode is on, it's obviously we're going to try and set you up for tactics that will be successful, and we'll also tell you who you should keep, who you should sell, maybe areas to invest in, that sort of business. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you know just what to do to try and take this Crystal Palace team as far as possible. So in terms of the squad itself, let's have a quick look here. So we'll just go by in terms of star ratings. We'll also quickly have a look at the staff and see which coaching staff judgment of ability we can trust. So the best one at the club is Gary Isop. He's at 16 and 15 for ability and potential judgment in terms, and he seems to be the best candidate really. 16-15 is really good attributes, and I think we can rely on him giving us a good assessment or evaluation of your players. So going back to the squad, you need a squad of 22 at any club you manage, and the reason being is of course to have the numbers just in case of any injuries and that sort of business. 22 players is a perfect number if you ask me. It's just a personal opinion. Everyone likes to have different things, but I like to have a first 11 players who are leading, star or world-class players, and then obviously a backup 11 of youngsters who are ready for the division but have plenty of potential to become leading and star and world-class players. So that way you have a good rotation. The youngsters are always going to be trying to prove themselves. The first team is always going to be on their toes because they're worried about the youngsters stealing their spot, and just creates a good competitive squad. So bearing that in mind, you've got 26 players apparently, so 4 players you definitely do not need, and it depends on where those numbers are. But yeah, one of the first things I like to do is actually see who are the best 11 players at the squad and try and make a formation out of that. So you've got from Sakau to about Schlupp here. Apparently these are the 11 best players at your squad at the moment, but the truth of the matter is it's only up until Scott Dan that you actually have, these are the only players who are actually ready for the Premier Division. So we'll go through it one by one. But based on just looking at that, it sort of just made sense to go with a 4-3-3 formation. So we've decided to go for that for this squad. If we just take out all of these sort of players here, you've really just got 8 people here who are capable. So that's why I'm saying your squad's not really ready for first division football, because 3 players out of your first 11, no matter who you pick, are not going to be ready for the Premier League, and that leaves you in a very bad position, because obviously you're going to rotate based on form, based on injuries, that sort of business, and so you're already left. 8 is the maximum you could ever have in terms of being ready for Premier League. So this squad needs some serious heavy investment, and I would say you are one of the candidates to go down. So this is what makes it an even more interesting challenge, is that not only are you a candidate to go down, but the board expects you to finish mid-table with a very, very weak squad. So you're gonna have to do some sort of miracle to do that, and it's a huge challenge and a very interesting one, and one that would be good to take on really if you're looking for a Premier League team to take on. You're not sure who, but yeah. Bearing in mind our formation, we can look at the players in more depth in terms of positions and where we need to invest in, and what numbers we need in what positions, that sort of business. So obviously you need 2 players per position, so you've got 2 goalkeepers here, which is perfect. Speroni though is only a Sky Bet League 1 player, so he's not even a championship player, for good God. So you really do need to move him on and bring in a youngster with potential. You've got Wayne Hennessy here, who's also just a championship player. So in truth, if you could get rid of both of them somehow and actually bring in a leading... no, you're not going to be able to go straight into leading, to be honest. But if you could get a decent player for the Premier League, or a good player would be even better, that would be perfect. And then a backup with a youngster with potential. I would say the first... You know, I always say this in all my episodes, so I'll say it now before we actually go through every single position. But do not sell before you can buy. So make sure you invest first, and then you can sell off that player and make that money back or anything, and that way you have your number secured. And you know, because a lot of people would sell off that player and then they realize, oh crap, I can't actually buy someone else, and then you're just left short of numbers, and that's actually worse than just having a championship goalkeeper and a Sky Bet League 1 goalkeeper. But yeah, bearing that in mind, we'll have a quick look at the budget just to give you an idea. So you're on 8 million, but that's the maximum, and that only leaves you with about 20k wages. So what I normally like to do is actually have it towards the middle and just leaning a little bit to transfer budget, and so you kind of have more like 4 million to spend on the squad. Now if you keep your team in the league this season, you'll definitely have a ton of money to spend next season. Just to give you an idea in terms of projection, your balance is very poor, of course. Alright, well it looks like there's more damage being done to the Crystal Palace than I realised. Alright, so your budget doesn't increase too much, but if you sign players on the free transfer market, you can very likely find decent or good players who are ready for the Premier League and sign them for free. So you won't actually have to spend your money, you can save your team and get them out of, well apparently it's no debt, they're just poor in terms of finances. But yeah, hopefully staying in the Premier League should make amends for that. I don't think the projections are quite accurate. Hopefully when the Premier League money kicks in, it'll be much better. So let's go back to squad, and that leaves us for the right back spots. So Joel Ward and Martin Kelly are your options in the right back position. Ward is a decent player for the Premier League, so at least you've got that area sorted, but Martin Kelly is not good enough and he's susceptible to injuries. So if you can move him on, he's worth 7.25 million. That's plenty of money to bring in a youngster with potential. I had no clue he was an England international. That was quite embarrassing, to be honest. But yeah, 7.25 million, you could probably bring in a youngster with potential instead of him. But obviously, like I mentioned, you have to be very careful. I would only say if you're very confident of securing the player that you're looking to buy, then you can afford to sell first and bring in another player instead. Centre backs though, Delaney, Scott Dan, Tompkins and Sakau. So Scott Dan and Sakau are going to be your main centre backs, and they are good enough for the division. So you've got a good player in Sakau, and Scott Dan is a decent player only, but that's still good enough. It'll still keep in the league, so that's alright. Sakau though, there is a bit of a concern. He's 3 weeks to 2 months out. But given that the season starts in about August, you should be okay. You should be there by the beginning of the season, so no need to necessarily replace him with a loan or any sort of business. Delaney and Tompkins though are your other centre backs. Good player for Sky Bet Championship, and James Tompkins is also okay. Apparently he's a decent player for the division, so at least that area is sort of sorted. Maybe you can move on Delaney and bring in a youngster with potential. That would be interesting. My suggestion would be, of course, as well, anyone who's decent or good enough, you should eventually replace and you know, either have one leading player and one backup youngster with potential. But obviously you have to do that, you know, sort of not rotation, what's the word for it? You kind of just have to do it eventually, so you move them on slowly. Once you have an actual settled squad of Premier League players who are ready, then you can start to go like, okay, now the weak ones are the ones who are only decent ability, so you move them on and get only good player ability, and then you realize, okay, good player abilities are the weakness now, let me move on to leading player, and so on and so forth. And that way, you know, you don't just sort of just try and sell everyone and then you're left with no one to really bring in. So it's just a slow process, but you can do it eventually, and you can the point is just to have players who are ready for the division. So Delaney doesn't fit that mold, move him on and try and get a youngster with potential. He's worth 525k. He's not worth too much in truth, but well, to be fair, his contract ends in the end of the season, so you could take a risk and let him stay just for one more season, and then, you know, just let the contract run out. But I would say try and sell him and bring in a youngster with potential, and you'd be better off, really. Left backs though, you've got 3 of them, which is more than you need in terms of numbers, so we'll be interested to see who you need to move on. Pape Soare is the one who's going to be your main choice, decent player for most Premier League sides. Jairo Riedewald is a very interesting player, 20 years of age. He's only a championship player though, and he's got plenty of potential. Not ready for the first team though, and he can play in a number of different positions. He's really good as a ball playing defender. Left back is not too great, but it's an area of a position where we need some better strength in, I suppose. He can very much do the job as a deep line playmaker in defensive midfield, but that's not necessarily where we want to play him. We've got numbers there, I think, so we need him in the left back spot. The problem is though, he's not ready, so you have a decision to make. He's got plenty of potential. Do you want to loan him out and bring in someone with a better backup potential? Just a loanee, bring in someone who's ready for division, and that might be a better option, because Patrick Van Aanholt is just a championship player, so you'd be better off selling him off 8 million, bring in a youngster with potential, and move on Jairo Riedewald as on loan with a good championship team, and that way you would have 8 million in the bank, and you don't necessarily have to spend it in the left back spot. So you could definitely bring in, use that money, invest it somewhere else, and you'd be better off. So that's one of the options that you have to do. You've got Luca, Cabaye and MacArthur, who are going to be your main 3 midfielders, and they're the ones who are ready for the division, so we're trying to get the best out of them. You've got a good player in Luca, I think it was. Johan Cabaye is a leading player, so he's the best player in your squad at the moment. And James MacArthur is a decent player for division. So these are only the really ones who are ready. Everyone else here, Much, Cheek and Fosu Mensah, are all not good enough for the division. So you've got championship player in Jordan Much. You've got, Ruben and Timothy Fosu Mensah as well. Both of them are championship players, but they are loanees. So I think you could... you could do that. You could terminate Ruben's contract, and you can terminate Timothy Fosu Mensah. Now, this is where you have a bit decision to make. If you terminate their contracts, you have to be completely secure in being able to bring in better players. You can bring them on loan. That's not an issue. Bring in Premier League players on loan, or if you are completely confident of actually buying 2 players, but considering your transfer budget, you won't be able to do that, so you're better off just checking the loan market first, see if there's any centre midfielders who are Premier League ready, and then you could cancel these 2. I think you would be paying their wages in truth. So he's on 35k in Chelsea, and you are covering the full 35k. Timothy Fosu Mensah as well, contract actually 15k at United, and you're covering the full 15k. So you have to bear that in mind as well, that you are still paying wages. You might be able to bring in Premier League ready players and not actually have to pay their wages at all, so consider that as well. Jordan Much though, you might be just better off moving him on. He's already listed. I think he was with the under 23s initially. One of the first things I do at every squad is that check the under 23s, see if there's anyone over age, move him up to the first squad and see if he's good enough, and then if he's not, just sell him. But yeah, he's a deep line playmaker, championship player. You'll get 4.3 million for him, and you might be better off investing that in a youngster who can eventually overtake the likes of Cabaye, MacArthur and Luca as well. In terms of wingers, you've got Schlupp, Lee Chu-yong, Andros Townsend, Zaha. Punchin really doesn't have a position in the squad, to be honest, and you've got Bakary Sakao. So this is a very serious area of weakness. It's just Zaha who can play, who's ready for the division. He's got a bit of potential as well, so it's good to have him on board, but you have to bear in mind that Zaha's injured for 3 to 4 months. So this is where you have a decision to make. Do you kind of just survive with about, I think, 2 months without him of the season, or do you bring in a youngster, or bring in not even a youngster, just bring in a loanee who's ready for the Premier League, and just to, just up until winter time. But bear in mind that it's going to be about 2 months until the transfer window once Zaha's ready. So, you're going to have 2 months where you sort of have too much stock, I suppose. But otherwise, all these players are not good enough. Townsend apparently just a championship player in FM18. You could say the same with Jeffrey Schlupp. He has potential to be a decent Premier League player apparently, but at the age of 24 it's unlikely that he'll improve too much more. You have a decision that you could move him on loan, but maybe you're better off selling him. The issue is, alright, I thought the issue was that Crystal Palace just bought him. Apparently they did it last season, so you could probably get 12.5 million and 56k wages off your budget, and that would be a good thing to do. Lee Chu-yong as well, we've already mentioned, championship player, so you could move him on. Townsend, like we said, 17 million. You could really sell a lot of these players and make a ton of money. Jason Punchin though is where you have a decision to make. He's a 12 million valued player, decent player for the division, so he's actually ready for first team action. The problem is we don't have any place for him in the squad. What you could do is retrain him as a right winger, as an inside forward, because that's the position we're looking for. And he also cuts inside from both wings. The problem is he's not a natural in that position, which means his ability will drop a bit, and that might make him be a championship player in that position. If we're playing him as a shadow striker, he's a decent player for the Premier League. So you have to keep that in mind. Do you want to retrain him, hold on to him, and hope that, you know, when he becomes the natural, he becomes more accustomed, and that way his ability in that role will increase again? Or do you just move him on and invest in a better player there? So yeah, you've got already 6 players who, you know, and you only need 4 wingers in truth. So that's kind of where you've got other areas, where you've got, you know, excess numbers, and you can sell those players and invest that money in other positions. Bakary Sakho is another option as well, because he's just a championship player. You'd be better off selling him for that 7 million if you could get it for. Benteke is your main striker. You've got 3 strikers, and in truth you only need 2, so it's another area you've got excess numbers in. Benteke, a good player for the Premiership. Connor Wickham is another player you need to make a decision on. He's 24, susceptible to injuries, but he is just a championship player. So the option is, once more, do you send him out on loan and hope he comes back ready for the Premier League, or do you just sell him off and hope for the best later on, because he is 24, unlikely to improve on 60k wages? You might be, you know, better off just selling him for the 11 million, 60k wages off your budget, and just bring in someone, a youngster with potential, who can compete with Benteke, an actual, you know, provide actual competition to Benteke. I think Benteke with Connor Wickham amongst, you know, in the ranks, he'd probably be thinking, I'm completely safe. You've also got Wickham out for 5 to 6 months, so the truth is you won't be able to sell him until winter time, and you might be better off just bringing in a loanee until, you know, the January transfer window comes around, because Freddie Ladapau is only a Sky Bet League 2 player. And at the age of 24, he is not going to be ready for the first team at all. So just sell him off. No need to even have him there. Just 195k. He's only on 700 wages. So, you know, just to get rid of him, really, in truth. But his contract ends in 2018. So it would be maybe a little bit tough to move him on. He is wanted, though. So try it. And, you know, as soon as he's off, the better for you. So that's all for the squad. We can talk about the tactics now. So it is a 4-3-3. Let's expand this here, and let's talk about what the aim is for this tactic. So we're trying to play possession-based football, and I think I mentioned this before, but possession-based football is actually more defensive and less risk-taking than most people realize. The whole point of possession is keeping the ball, so you cannot play risky passes because you are trying to keep the ball. So bearing that in mind, we're playing a less risky mentality with counter. You can do defensive as well when you're facing top teams, and let me actually explain why I picked this. So obviously I thought the best way to get everyone involved, the best players at your squad, was a 4-3-3. And so because of the formation, the 4-3-3 formation, I had to think, okay, now that this is a 4-3-3 formation, what can I do to try and, you know, bear in mind that this is a weak team in the division? How can I bring out the best out of them? So I said, obviously I can't play an attacking tactic, but I am playing an attacking formation. So what I could do is play a defensive tactic, and the defensive one is actually a a possession tactic. So that's why we've talked about. That's why we're taking on the counter, and that's why we're going with counter and possession football. And possession football very much suits the 4-3-3 as well, so hopefully it should work out. Like I mentioned, you can play on defensive as well. That's an option for you. You can maybe use one of the slots for that as well, and maybe when you're facing one of the bigger teams, that's an option. So I like to play with structured team shape because I like the roles to do the jobs themselves. If you play on fluid, you're kind of hoping the team instructions would do it, and in fluid, the players attack and defend together. In structured, everyone has their own little role. The team instructions is very simple, just shorter passing. You can obviously take off shorter passing and go retain possession as well, or you can do shorter passing and retain possession. I'm just not a fan of too many team instructions, so I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. There's a lot of different ways of keeping possession if anyone likes to do a lot of instructions. There's shorter passing, retain possession. You could probably go on a lower tempo, maybe work the ball into box, play out of defense, all that sort of business. You could very much keep possession that way. It's just my personal preference of doing it this way. So another thing to bear in mind is trying to play the players in their natural positions as well as trying to play them in their natural roles. Bearing that in mind, Hennessy's a normal goalkeeper, Sakho's a defensive centre back on defend, Scott Dan on a ball playing defender as a stopper, He can play as a defender, of course, on defend duty, but he's more comfortable as a stopper. I'd say it's a bit of a waste to play him as a defensive centre-back because he's quite good as a ball-playing defender, and kind of suits keeping possession as well. Stopper, I'm not really too much a fan of, but if it's going to bring out the best out of him, why not? We're not playing an offside trap, so he can push on and, capitalise on that. What else does that leave us with? So Ward, is a fullback on support just to complement Townsend playing as a winger on attack. But obviously Townsend is not a first teamer in the sense that, he's just a championship player. So you can easily move him on, replace him with someone else that would probably more suit this position. But yeah, Ward is a fullback on support he can do. Suarez is going to play as a wing back on attack. He's not entirely comfortable with it, but with Zaha on the left as an inside forward, he's not necessarily too comfortable with it, but he's a winger naturally on the right, and the problem is that he's right-footed, which suits the winger role. That's completely fine, but he cuts inside from both wings. So I had an option. Do I try and train him to stop cutting inside from both wings, or do I just play as an inside forward? So I checked his stats as an inside forward. He can do quite a lot of it. He's got decent finishing, good vision, good passing. Decision making is tiny bit poor, but not too much. Composure and long shots are your main issues, but that's not too much of a concern. If you're playing shorter passing, he's less likely to take these long shots, and hopefully his composure can improve as he improves. So bearing that in mind, if he is an inside forward, I can't play him on the right wing because it means he'll cut onto his weaker foot. So we're going to switch him to the left wing and play him as an inside forward, and hopefully that should work perfectly, and that way we don't have to try and tell him to stop cutting inside from both wings. Bearing that in mind, Suarez, that's why he's playing him as a wing back instead of a fullback. Fullbacks complement wingers really well, and wing backs complement inside forwards really well as well. In midfield, we've got MacArthur as a defensive midfielder. He's most comfortable as support, but we don't need him on that. We need him as a defensive midfielder on defend duty. Same attributes, so he should be completely fine playing there. And that means we can push up Milivojevic, who's a ball-winning midfielder. He's very comfortable playing in central midfield as well. It's the same role, but apparently he's a little bit less uncomfortable playing it in central midfield, but still definitely good enough. Very good attributes for the ball-winning midfielder role, and that should help us win back possession quite well too. We've got Kabay in the new one of the new roles in the game in FM18, the Mezzala. So what he's going to be doing in terms of instructions, he's playing on attacking duty, which means he takes more riskier passes, he gets further forward, moves into channels and roam from positions. This is perfect for us. He'll complement the target man very well, and at the same time, hopefully shorter passing will mean he'll take less riskier passes. It's not the best thing for possession football, but it is trying to get the best out of Kabay. And yeah, you can read the role here. It says that modern interpretation of Mezzala is a central player that likes to drift wide, which is why he moves into the channels, operate in the half spaces, essentially a central half winger who likes to do his defending slightly further up the field, although he does generally have less defensive responsibility. So apparently with an attack duty, he'll even leave his midfield responsibility to his teammates, was mainly looking to make attacking contributions in the final third, which is perfect because we've got other two midfielders who'll do the defensive work, ball-winning midfielder and the defensive midfielder. They'll cover him just fine, so this is actually the perfect formation for Mezzala. And yeah, we've got Benteke as a target man. So obviously a target man is not the greatest role to play for a player, for a team who are trying to keep possession, but it does bring out the best out of Benteke. So bearing that in mind, he's got the perfect attributes for it. It kind of just makes sense for it. You could probably pay him as a complete forward on support as well, which will actually suit your team better and keep in possession. And the work rate's kind of poor, but all his other attributes are perfect for it. Like to beat offside trap is not too good. We would actually prefer him dropping deeper. But yeah, I mean, you can play him in a number of different roles, but the most suited he is in is target man. If you're going to switch him around, play him as a complete forward on support. Player role suitability is such a big thing in FM18 this time. So I would, if you ask me my suggestion, I would suggest play him as a complete forward on support initially, and if he's not performing too well, then move him as a target man on support, because complete forward on support is the one that actually suits your team a little bit better in terms of your possession and your tactic style. So that's kind of it in terms of the tactics. You will need to invest in other areas, and obviously you need to try and eventually move away from certain roles. So inside forward on support works quite well in terms of keeping possession. Let me just explain how you try and keep possession. So you kind of need players who don't dribble too much. You need players who don't take too many riskier passes, and that's kind of the gist of it, to be honest. That's kind of what you're looking for in general. And that way you try and keep possession as much as possible. 4-3-3 is a good formation to keep possession, but obviously if you're trying to find risk-free roles, that's going to be a bit tough. The inside forward does dribble, but he does not cross too much, so that kind of suits it, because, you know, if possession, you're trying to cross as little as possible. That's the word I was looking for. Advanced playmaker might suit you from out wide, actually, because it does cross less often. The problem is that it does take risky passes. And cut inside with the ball is not a problem, but yeah, risky passes are still there. Trey Quartis does the same. Wide target man, you're gonna knock the ball up forward to him all the time. Rudimentor might actually suit you best in terms of keeping possession, because they sit narrower, they get further forward, they cross less often, no risky passes, and they roam from position naturally, so that might suit your team quite well. So maybe you can eventually move these two to Rudimentors. I feel like you can't play two Rudimentors though, so maybe keep Zaha as an inside forward because he is ready for division. Move on Townsend and try and find that Rudimentor. That might be a good option. In terms of the central defenders, you might be better off just playing two central defenders, but I feel like no matter what tactic you're playing, having one ball playing defender is always useful for your team. In terms of the defensive midfielder, what you should eventually move on to might be an anchorman. I feel like anchormans work really well with possession football as well as in the 4-3-3. They play less riskier passes. That's perfect for you. They don't dribble too much. They don't shoot too much. Another possession type of football or attribute that you want to look out for is roles that don't shoot too often, because that's kind of perfect for you. That's kind of why we're playing a target man on support, to be honest. They don't dribble too much, they hold the ball up a lot, they don't take too many risky passes and that sort of business. Complete forward on support does that quite often. Midfield, I feel like the ball winning midfielder role is perfect. They win the ball back for your team and help you keep possession as well. They quite often just play simple passes. In midfield, Mesler seems a decent option, but they do play riskier passes. When you play essential midfielder, advanced playmaker on attack maybe does take too many riskier passes. You might be better off playing essential midfielder on attack. I feel like that might suit your team best and work well in terms of trying to keep possession. I can't imagine any of these other roles doing too well. And that's kind of it. In terms of the striker, maybe what you want to work towards eventually is deep lying forward on support takes too many risks. Target man on support is quite good. Hold up the ball and dribble less. That kind of suits you best. Poachers to attacking. Complete forward on support we already talked about. Defensive forward on support might be your best bet. Not only do they try and win back possession for your team, but they also, I need to try and move this. Alright, yeah, they don't take too many riskier passes, so try and work towards a defensive forward on support. A false nine is really good because they drop really well for your team, and they are naturally a lone striker, which is the formation that you're playing in. The problem is, of course, too many risky passes. So I feel like that's kind of the tactic that you want to work towards eventually, and I think that would suit well for the possession type of football if that's what you're working with, anyways. But I feel like this is the best currently to get the best out of your current team. And just slowly try and move towards the tactics I was mentioning earlier. Maybe we can go through some other things. Actually, not really, to be honest. I feel like we've covered all the main important things. In terms of maybe youngsters to look out for, you've got under 23s, under 18s, players with potential. There's really just the one, Jason. Inside forward on the right, he would maybe slot into your team very well, but obviously you have to send him out on loan quite often. He's only a Sky Bet League 2 player, but he seems to be the most capable of your youngsters. I feel like anyone else, not so much. But again, you never know. Some players exceed the potential, some fall far short of it. And just keep an eye out and try and give everyone as much game time as possible. So yeah, I think that's all for today's episode. If you did enjoy it, of course, please do hit the like button and subscribe for more daily Football Manager 2018 content. And as always, guys, thank you all very much for watching.